Hello and welcome back to the channel for some more Prime Cutz, and I've accepted what the metrics say, that people want to know more about the Adventures of series, so I'm taking a look today at the last one remaining, which is Adventures of a Private Eye from 1977. It is the middle one. It followed on from 76's Adventures of a Taxi Driver. This one isn't as terrible as the others. It's not good, but it's not awful. Well, it's not as awful. Mainly that's because this one has a fairly solidish plot to it. It's more than just a series of random encounters. This one actually has a storyline that runs through. So let's take a look. The film stars Christopher Neal as Bob West here, who works for a private eye. Christopher Neal's quite an interesting character. He would go on to produce hit songs for, amongst others, Mike and the Mechanics, Celine Dion, Sheena Easton. It's fair to say he's had something of an eclectic career. Anyway, here he plays an assistant to a private detective, played by John Pertwee, as something of a womanizing, ultra cool, ultra suave gentleman. So I'm sure that opens up plenty of opportunities for some interesting Doctor Who fan fiction. Judd is heading away on a case and he's leaving Bob in charge, but he tells him not to try and investigate anything or take on any new cases. He just wants Bob to keep the place ticking over, just answer the phone, things like that. He really doesn't trust him to get involved in anything, and that's setting up the plot line, of course, for the film, in that Bob is a bit of an idiot and he tries to investigate a new case that comes in. You do kind of feel a bit sorry for the actresses in these minor roles who are there just really to appear, take their clothes off and then disappear again. But it does have to be said that despite its best efforts, much like the other films, it's just not a sexy film. Nothing is particularly alluring. It's all just very 70s and drab and quite sad, really. Of course, Bob is dreaming of taking on a new case and making his name as a private eye. We're then introduced to Violet, the new secretary, a character where the entire joke is based around the fact that she keeps talking about how her looks have caused her problems with men, and of course Bob doesn't think that she's attractive. That's essentially the entire character. We then meet Susie Kendall as Laura Sutton, who is a former model who has married an old man who has recently died, and she is being blackmailed because the will states that she can't bring disrepute to the family name, otherwise she won't inherit any money. So, having seen some explicit photographs, Bob is on the case. First of all, he goes to investigate the home of a photographer that Susie Kendall's character has worked with in the past. We get some carry-on level innuendo between him and the housekeeper, who is played by famed former sexpot Diana Dawes. The photographer arrives to find Bob and his ruse as the pest control man, and that pretty much brings a conclusion to the scene and the sequence, having set up some gags around mouse traps in the photographer's bed. You can probably guess where that goes. So we get a bit more interaction with Violet. She is actually a fairly charming character despite being quite shallow. Bob travels out into the country to meet Susie and the rest of the family surrounding the will in their country house out in the kind of suburbs around London. So we get introduced to a range of eccentric characters. So you have the butler, you have the aunt, all of these kooky characters that play into the into the blackmail mystery. I've given a bit of a game away there, that there's a bit of a murder later on. So we have a strange breakfast sequence where everybody is introduced. And I think it's fair to say that this film probably has the strongest cast out of the three. You have the likes of Harry H. Corbett, Susie Kendall that we've already mentioned, Diana Dawes was there, Ian Lavender appears. You've got some pretty decent names in this one. So Bob follows Laura out into the garden where he sees her meeting the photographer, and he encounters one of the family members in the boat on the lake. And of course, this is where we have one of the escapades where we get the classic hanky-panky in the boat runs away, Bob falls in the water, has to take his clothes off, leading to, fun times and sexiness, supposedly. Then we see the photographer going to a clandestine meetup where he is shot. See, I told you there was a murder. So Laura and Bob find the body, and Laura convinces Bob that they should hide the body, so we have a bit of Weekend at Bernie's like body comedy, dead body moving comedy. And as Bob is driving the body in this trunk, he is pulled over by the policeman, who points out he has a flat tyre and assists on helping it. So you have basically a sequence built around the policeman helping him move this trunk. And I actually think it's one they don't take full advantage of. They don't really kind of milk the comedy out of it that they could have done. Anyway, that gives way into a strange bolted on sequence where this housewife is obsessed with trying to have her way with Bob, and he has to run away from her. Here we have Bob's friend and Violet. Bob's friend has been in the film more, I've just not shown him any clips, and he's the voice of reason, telling Bob to stop trying to get involved and to do the sensible thing. So he convinces him to go to the police and try and tell them about the murder that has happened before he's accused of being an accomplice. Through some confusion, he's pointed towards the Chief Inspector's house, where he meets the Chief Inspector's wife, who, of course, this being the type of film that it is, she's really randy and immediately starts to make a play and basically sexually harasses him. But, it's played for laughs because this is the 70s. We then move into the classic territory of the young child coming downstairs, wants to know why Bob is jumping up and down with Mummy on the sofa, all of that kind of business. Anyway, Bob follows a lead to a burlesque club where a contact supposedly wants to meet to discuss the blackmail. We have some shenanigans around him trying to get into the club past the bouncer and the security men. And this ends up with him diving into a changing room and coming out dressed like this. Because, of course, that would convince everybody that he's a dancer, wouldn't it? But this is also where we are introduced to Adrienne Poster as Lisa Maroney, playing a basically Lisa Minnelli styled character. But she is excited to meet Bob because she thinks Bob is Judd, and she's heard of Judd and Judd's various exploits as a globe-trotting private detective. So she agrees to help Bob and smuggles him out of the club. But now that she has rescued Bob out, again, of course, the female character immediately goes to, well, I've known you for 5 minutes, let's have sex. But she has a comedy gangster villain. I keep thinking how much that this actor playing this guy looks like, or at least a little bit like, Matt Smith. Might just be me. Anyway, the next day we find out that somehow the photographer is still alive, and that it is in fact Laura herself who is behind everything. It's not really clear why or what exactly is going on at this point. But Bob has spent all night hiding in the bedroom of Lisa. So he's frantically running back, having got some vital piece of evidence. Again, it's not really clear what or why, but after some comedy chase sequences, everything reaches a climax. We get an epilogue scene where John Pertwee has returned, basically to make fun of Bob, and that's it. It reminds me overall as a film a little bit of the Morecambe and Wise films that got made, in particular the Intelligence Men, which is based around secret agents rather than a private eye, but it has that same kind of comedy around investigating people and sneaking around places. That one, by the way, is much better than this one, so I'd recommend those Morecambe and Wise films, particularly if you do like Morecambe and Wise. Overall, Adventures of a Private Eye, like I say, it's better than the other two in the series, but it's not great. The central plot helps it, but it's very confused and muddled. We still do have a couple of sequences that are just randomly bolted on to add some more TNA, shall we say, to the film. And like I said, it isn't sexy. It's just not. It's not particularly sexy. It's not particularly funny either. These films are something of a cultural curio, I would say, these days. It still baffles me why they were so popular at the time. But I would say this one does have another advantage going for it, now that I think about it, is it does come across as overall as being a lot less misogynistic than the other two films do come across as a lot of the time. So I would say if you insist on watching one of these, watch this one. But overall, yeah, I would give them all a miss, to be honest. We'll be back again soon with some more Prime Cutz, but keep your eye on your channel for lots of other interesting, hopefully, warbles about films and things. And I will catch you all again soon.